Hello and welcome to the Irish Angle in association with William Hill. Make sure to download the William Hill app to check out all their latest offers. Delighted to be joined for this week's show by Paddy Flood and Johnny Ward. Lads, how are you keeping?
Good, Emma.
Good, Emma, thanks.
Very good. Johnny, you're just back from Gordon Elliott's this morning. How did that go, media morning down there?
Yeah, I have to thank the two of you for your patience and our production team. Paddy Flood said he thought I was going to be recording this in a hay barn somewhere, and that's the nature of these things. You've been there as well, Emma. You don't know. I was in Gordon's office looking for the Wi-Fi, and you're kind of ducking and diving. But I suppose I was late because Gordon was just so given with his time to everyone, and I just feel he's in a very good place at the moment. He's talking about how much he enjoyed the Christmas, but just also that he's probably just matured a bit over the years as well. And he actually hasn't been banging in the winners in January, but I think he's just taken maybe the wins and the loss a bit differently than years gone by. And he says, he's very, very happy with his team, and I think he's 70 full-time staff, and you see the amount of riders there this morning, like Jody McGarvey, now a big part of the team as well. Jack Kennedy, Sam Ewing actually had an injury and wasn't riding out, but Jack Kennedy, Danny Gilligan, and all the other main guys there. It's always a privilege to get to these yards, and I think my takeaway from it was just how happy he is with his lot at the moment.
So a little bit of news on Twitter there. El Kairos probably going to miss the Dublin Racing Festival. Did he elaborate much on that story?
Yeah, basically that's I'd say Paddy can kind of get where he's come from. If you go from a race like falling, like you did, into a Grade 1, he's just not sure it's ideal if he were a bit hesitant at the first couple of hurdles. So he's more inclined to go down the sort of maiden route with him and take it from there. And Ballyfad is a horse that they say doesn't work like the house down anywhere near this guy, but they like a lot. But El Kairos, he was really speaking up the way he works as a horse, and I think they're going to take the slow approach of him.
Very good. I want to definitely look forward to. He's right up there in the spring betting. You can probably see why they're taking maybe a slower approach after that fall and Leopardstown down the last day. But lads, we'll just have a bit of a review of the week gone by. We'll start with some of the UK stuff. I suppose the big race of the weekend, the Clarence House. John Bond came out on top there, Paddy. It was great to see Elliott Tom getting back up from a tired looking fall. He was fairly winded after that, I'd say. But good old John Bond back in the winners' enclosure. It was a good performance from him.
Brilliant performance and a great performance from the rider, to be honest. Young James Bowen. He's a cracking rider, and I was delighted he rode it, and I was delighted that Nicky Henderson wasn't going around looking at what jockeys were available or anything. That bit of loyalty, that can make or break a young man's career. And, he had the pressure going out there. Like he's the first to admit that he got it wrong in Cheltenham when he rode him a few seasons back, and he was over exuberant on him that day, and the horse is prone to a mistake. And listen, he 5 out or 4 out, I think, over the weekend he done the same. But it was a great gutsy ride and a great story, and what a horse. I mean, how many horses pay back their actual sale price, and I would say very, very few do. And this fella has paid it back and more, and given JP and the team some great days, And look, there's still plenty there. Look, the legs are a little bit older, but I'd be shooting for Ryanair now, and I'd say he'd be a little bit more comfortable in Cheltenham over the trip. Disappointed with Elliott Tom. Just never caught the eye. You were always a little bit worried if you backed him. Paul never looked comfortable, from his last win in Sandown. He jogged around everywhere. He was nice and relaxed and winged fences, and he was brilliant. But I don't know, there was something amiss at the weekend, and thank God he's up. But I wouldn't be backing him after such a heavy fall in Cheltenham. That's going to take a hell of a lot out of that horse. Badly winded, a really bad fall, and lucky to come out the other side of it.
Yeah, he was just never really going, was he? Even Paul switched him out there about halfway. I don't know, was it looking for better ground or just trying to get him to travel a bit better? But definitely wasn't his running, but good to see him back up. Barry Connell also wasn't impressed by the running of the race. Johnny, did you see those comments? A Mickey Mouse race. I can't see any of those horses having a chance at Cheltenham in March. I couldn't see it before the race. I can't see it afterwards either. I think if we jump a clear ground, we win. Good confidence from Barry. He's never short of it. Johnny, what do you make of those comments?
I am, and we spoke about Paul Nicholls like in recent weeks when this is just, I love this stuff. Like I spoke to Barry before the race on Saturday when he was at Navan, and he was more or less saying that I'm not really that worried about the opposition and all of that. And this is before the race. And the race itself, it's funny that Paddy mentions horses not necessarily paying the way, because this is an example of two, like, Tisselask was bought for 11 grand, like 11 grand after was it James Ewart stopped training, and basically the owners had a decision to make. It was a great piece in the Racing Post. It's the type of piece you don't see. Talk to the owners who sold a horse, who's now gone on to like all of these, won all this money, like, and has an each way squeak in the Queen Mother. But John Baum was one of those horses that JP bought for huge money that actually has paid his way. But the Barry Connell stuff, I think that's great, Emma. Like Barry Connell was just saying he couldn't believe how Marine Nationale like ran the race that he did. I don't think there was anything like, I can't see any of these horses winning the Champion Chase. I normally oppose Elliott Tomp. And the one day I did put him up, I couldn't see how he was beaten. He didn't run his race at all. Like John Bond, as consistent as he is and how reliable as he is, like I don't think this form amounts to that much. Marine Nationale will win the Champion Chase, I feel, if he is produced on the day and jumps around. But great stuff from Barry Connell. He's really refreshing in interviews. People half like say, "Oh, Barry talks up his horses." It's very often borne out by what he says. Like his horses are in great form at the minute as well, and great to see that. Like I'm trying to get Gordon Elliott to go to a preview night, and he's telling me he's not going to do it this year. He's only doing a small number of horses or a small number of preview nights. But like the preview night circuit this year, I'm actually kind of half buzzing for it, because I think there's so much to talk about. Like, and you need this kind of hype that Barry Connell brings as well.
What did you think of it, Paddy? Like, he doesn't lack in confidence, putting a fair bit of pressure on himself, but in fairness, he normally delivers when he's this bullish about a horse.
I suppose, look, he's looking at the horse every day of the week, and he is a superstar horse, really, and I think where Barry's coming from is that he's never been classed as that superstar, so he's always been the underdog. So I think it's about time he started to put his chest out a little bit, because the horse is he's a machine, and look, going on form, he's definitely the one to beat in Cheltenham. But it's funny because I've only met Barry. I don't know him well or anything, but I think it's his demeanour that it kind of shocks you when he comes out with this stuff, because you think he's a really quiet, unassuming man, and listen, he's put a lot of money into the game, and I don't know, he was taken for a ride, in my opinion, for many, many years until he decided to grab the reins himself and do it his own way, and it's working for him, and he's got great lads there, like Roger Loughran, Gareth Cotter, Paul Finn is on the ground. They're all ex-Desi Hughes men, and done 15, 20 plus years with them. So them boys know what they're talking about. And it's great. Look, we're talking about it. It's going, and it's getting Marie Nationale's name out there again, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. He told us he was definitely going to win the Supreme, and he delivered on that, in fairness. So I'm not going to back against him in the Champion Chase at all. It looks like, if he arrives there in the form he can show, he'll be a tough one to beat in that division, I think. But just sticking kind of on the Nicky Henderson team, Constitution Hill has a bit more news about him during the week. They've put on a race. Well, they haven't put it on. It was in the calendar already, I think, but they've moved it to one of those Friday night live cards in Suddle. I think the 20th of February. Constitution Hill is likely to line up for a 40k novice race over a mile and a half. Paddy, what did you think about this? I saw an interview from the team at Suddle around the decision to kind of bump the prize money, I suppose, which is one big talking point to it. They were saying Constitution Hill couldn't run for 5,000 or 10,000. Like, that's something I don't agree with. I'm not sure, does it justify putting on this big prize money? Look, I know it adds a lot to the card, but I think Nicky Henderson would have run him, if there was no prize money on the day, realistically. But they've made the decision, likely to attract a big crowd, I suppose. What did you make of all that going on during the week?
Oh, look, when I heard it first, I was a bit like, oh, Jesus, not this again, It was becoming a circus with the horse, and all for the wrong reasons, I was thinking, but when you break it down, I suppose it's sponsorship gold, really, for whoever coughed up the money. There's going to be a massive media on it. There's going to be a big race night. Look, fair play for the sponsorship, but I think the old horse is just being used now as a gimmick, like he should be if all things being equal, he should be in the Dublin Racing Festival or Cheltenham Trials Day. You know, that's where he should be by right. And look, he's going for a flat run. What if he gets beat? What then? What do we do then? You know, do we just, sure, we'll go jumping now? Why not go jumping next weekend, you know, and do what he's bred to do? But look, listen, as from a sponsorship side of it works, whoever coughs up the money, because we're all talking about it. But otherwise, I have a pain in my face talking about Constitution Hill. Unless he's going to run in a race with a different jockey, then I'd like to talk about it.
Yeah, well, he'll definitely have a different jockey this time, I'd imagine. Who would you put up on the flat, Paddy?
I'd say Rob Hornby would probably ride him. I think he was rode him a piece of work, and I think at the start of the season there, Rob rode a different horse for Nicky as well. So I don't know. I'm sure Oisin Murphy, I've seen him retweeting stuff there on Twitter, and would love to have a crack in him. Anyone would love to have a crack in him, but realistically, I'd say Rob.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Look, Johnny, I suppose like it's a PR masterpiece, really. Like, it's one of those student race nights. It's going to be on ITV Race, and there'll be, you know, big crowds of young people in, and, you know, these young people mightn't have an awful lot of an idea about racing, but most of them will probably know the name Constitution Hill, or at least have heard it in some regard. Look, if he was going to run on the flat, I suppose they're probably doing it in the best way possible to kind of make the most out of it for promoting the whole thing.
Yeah, like it is a bit of a circus at this stage. Like when the Racing Post has a big article on who's going to ride Constitution Hill on the flat, and then they have desirability and likelihood on a scale of 1 to 5, desirability 1 to 5, likelihood for Ryan Moore, Daniel Muscat, Rob Hornby, Tom Marquand, and Kieran Fallon. It's all like, this horse hasn't won any of his last 4 races, lads. Like, it's not at this stage. We kind of have to just like see what happens. And I'm with Paddy. I mean, I just don't know if Nico de Boinville suits the horse anymore, but I still think they should be going to Leopardstown. Like, and the Leopardstown champion hurdle is going to be an exceptional race, and wouldn't it be amazing to see him come over here? For all of that, I am looking forward to seeing it, but at this stage, I think it is a bit of a circus.
Yeah, probably is. Look, we'll wait and see what happens there. Hopefully he'll show up now to be a bit of a circus if they put all that on and he didn't end up making it, or he ended up going somewhere else. But we'll wait and see. I suppose one more bit of, this caused a bit of a stir in social media in the UK over the weekend. In Windsor yesterday, Scorpio Rising, Sean Bowen basically made his way home and maybe some people thought getting in the way of Harry Skelton. I thought it was a good bit of race riding, Paddy. Harry Skelton had a few words with Sean afterwards, kind of reminiscent of Patrick Mullins and Danny in Limerick there last Christmas. But I'm not sure, did Sean have an awful lot of apologising to do here?
No apologising to do whatsoever. I mean, this happens 6 times a week in Ireland and twice on a Sunday. It's called riding a race to win. Like, I was watching it on At the Races, and I don't know the chap's name who was presenting, but he just couldn't let it go. You know, he was basically, it was broken down for him to tell him exactly what happened. He's just not having it. You know, I think he's a bit of a fanboy of Harry Skelton's, because, I mean, a smashing ride by Bowen. Like, the day you don't go out there to put someone in a pocket or to win the race is the day you hang up your boots. I mean, as I said to you, like, the Bowen boys, they've grown up pony racing in Ireland, in Dingle. These boys are really tough, hardy men, and, you know, there's no fluke to him being a champion jockey. I mean, Ruby used to do it 9 times out of 10 in races, even when he wasn't winning races. He wouldn't give you a millimetre, and that's the way it should be. You know, if you're watching indoor track running, go and watch them the second last lap from the finish. Watch how many people try and box each other in. I mean, in England, the lads tend to give each other a little bit more room. And I remember back through the years going over there thinking, geez, you get some room here, you know. And whereas Ireland, if there's a gap there, you get there quick, because if you open your mouth to say, oh, I'm coming, that door will be shut on you. And listen, it just came across a little bit. I like Harry Skelton, he's a cracking rider, but it came across a little bit entitled. It came across to me a little bit like Frankie Dettori having a go at Dinner Brown McMonagle one day when he put Frankie in a pocket on Stradivarius. And listen, nothing good comes out of it. You know, one's a champion jockey now and the other one's broke. So, you know, you need to just shut your mouth on the day and take it that you got stitched up by a better ride on the day. But just make a hula blue of it as a joke. You know, it was a brilliant bit of race riding. It happens every day of the week, and yeah, it was just a storm in a teacup. Like, Harry could have brought that into the weigh room. He didn't need to pull up. And I tell you what, I'd say Harry was more angry than scared. You know, that sort of way. He got caught sleeping. He was using the other Bowen as slipstream. And Sean Bowen spotted that and said, if I can get by him quick, I can put him in that pocket. Harry rushed then into the back of the horse in front of him. And then his horse jumped the hurdle way too big because he got a fright. And it's as simple as that. It happens all the time. And I think making a big hula-baloo of it is a joke. You know, it's an absolute joke, because if you can't, as I said, if you don't do that, that's not in your head going out in a race, and you see that opportunity and you don't take it, well, then hang up the boots. Yeah,
100%. I'd say there's probably not a whole pile more to add to that. Harry Skelton would probably be angry at himself more so than Sean Bowen, is what I'd be thinking. But yeah, I explained very well there, and probably not much more to add to that. But Johnny, we'll talk about some more of the Irish action last week. I suppose starting off with Thurles yesterday. First note there, bookmakers sponsored the entrance to Thurles yesterday, so it was free entry. And what a crowd they had. I wasn't there now, but I've just seen it on TV and seeing pictures. People were saying it was the biggest crowd they'd seen in Thurles in a long, long time.
Yeah, just on that race, I love this stuff. I think we don't get anywhere near enough analysis from jockeys about what jockeys are doing in a race, like what footballers do and their touch and all that. We see slow-mos of it. We don't see what jockeys are actually doing in the race. Watch the race to 12:58 at Fairyhouse on the 15th, and the incident between Keane Quirk and Mark Walsh coming around the bend. Stick with the process and Nelson Muntz. It's race riding. It's brilliant to watch. I'm not a jockey, but I love this stuff, and you don't give an inch. Like, within, just obviously be fair and all that, and don't do anything dangerous. But that is race riding, and I love to watch that. In terms of the racing that we've had in Ireland, it's it was a good weekend. I suppose the Saturday in Navan, I was in Navan on Saturday, and it's been an interesting week with the news breaking just as we were coming on the show last about Mark Walsh last week and Harry Cobden, and I was I was always looking forward to Mark having a winner in Navan on Saturday, and I just on the Mark Walsh stuff, like, he hasn't spoken about it since, in the McManus camp don't really give many interviews or whatever, but my understanding anyway is that, and I'm sort of just, I haven't spoken to Mark Walsh, but my understanding is that he's nowhere near retiring or anything like that. This man is fit as a fiddle, and I feel going forward it's going to be interesting to see the rides when Harry Cobden isn't in Ireland and all that. But we haven't heard much from the camp, McManus camp or the Mark Walsh camp, but this idea that he's 40 this year and that'll be the end for him, I don't think that's true at all.
Yeah, Paddy, I suppose there's been, when we spoke about it yesterday on the show, it was quite fresh. The news had just broken, but there's been kind of more reporting on it. Like Johnny said, there hasn't been any interviews with Mark or anything like that. But yeah, I suppose the people have been maybe inferring in a way that Mark might be on the brink of retirement. But there's been nothing confirmed, so we can't really say whether or not that is true or not. But what did you make of the kind of fallout of the story in the week gone by?
Well, I suppose I jumped to that conclusion as well, just because of the way the story broke. I would have presumed Mark Walsh has been associated with JP since, I think, the first week we both got our licenses. I lived with Mark for years in Kildare.
What's he like, Paddy?
Cracking fella, Mark. We grew up riding ponies together. We used to go around Clane and Charlie O'Neill's there, all cross-country course, and kind of made us. And we used to go around with, 2-pound saddles on the ponies, riding, real short over jumps, so we great, times. And we used to be in Peter McCreary's and that there messing around. So, like, Mark ended up in Christy Roach's, and then basically nourished Mark to be their main rider. When I was riding, say, 50 winners a year, Mark might have been riding 2. But there were 2 at JP's, and they were kind of laid out for him to teach him. So he's been part of the system for so long that I presumed when the announcement was made for Harry Cobden that surely Mark has kind of said, listen, I'm pulling the pin on it, because why else would you, release this? Look, I'm not in the camp. I haven't spoken to Mark, and I kind of made it my business not to send him a text or interfere with him, because who knows what's going on. I don't know how JP's operation works. I've wrote about 10 or 15 winners for them, but that was all. I was never in the system or done a whole pile for him. But as in Mark's character, Mark's very steady, very level, very talented. He's a great family. His brother Johnny is involved in it as well, the breeding side of it, and mother and father there and Clane are very, very steady, stable people. And Mark won't get too down or he won't get too up about it. But if it's playing out that, he hasn't been approached and had that cup of tea with, or whatever you want to call it, I would say that's pretty bad form, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, you'd be shocked if that was the way it went down. I was reading some things. Richie Forrest had a very good piece in the Racing Post about the whole thing, and I think he's ridden more Grade 1 winners for JP than any other rider. Which it's hard to believe considering. I suppose he was number 2 for a long time, but he's delivered for them on the big stage time and time again. So you'd hope that that's not the way it went down. We obviously don't know ourselves. But Johnny, I suppose one thing that it was a bit unusual was the fact that the news kind of seemed to leak that Harry Cobden had gotten the job without being in official streams. But it's not really an operation that leaks news too much. But this got out, and maybe that's probably why they had to announce it. But it's all maybe a little bit unusual the way it went down.
Yeah, that's the point, Timmy. Yeah, it's a tight operation. How JP McManus has made all his money over the years, I don't know. I'm not sure anyone knows. He hardly ever gives interviews. But certainly JP did have that line, think of all the fish in the world who would be alive if they kept their mouth shut. Now, my attitude to that would also be, JP, fish need to eat, so they have to open their mouth at some stage. So, JP's attitude to, I suppose, the game would be that if you want to punt your own horses, JP had a horse running on Saturday at Navan who was an 11-year-old who'd never run a race, run 35 odd times. I can't imagine the amount of money that he spent training that horse and having owned him. And I'm sure the McManus operation, they want to get some money back punting their old horses. And if you want to do that as an operation, you do have to keep things kind of in-house, and you can't have people, talking about all your horses and getting other people to back them. It just doesn't work like that. So it's an operation that's quite unique. It's completely different to the Jigginstown operation, for example. And I imagine what you're kind of inferring here, is that this sort of leaked, and then because Paul Nicholls had been asked about it, and somebody must have said something to somebody, and then Paul Nicholls asked about it, and then all of a sudden there's a rumor out there, and then I'd imagine they felt, okay, well, we have to kind of deal with this now. How that played out with Mark Walsh, or his sort of his camp or his family or whatever, and when did everyone find out? I just don't know, because we haven't heard much about it since. But I definitely get the impression Mark's not finished yet.
Yeah, sure, look, we won't know, I suppose, till we get the news straight from the horse's mouth, as they say. But keeping on, I suppose, the topic of JP McManus, they landed a bit of a gamble on Thursday in Fairyhouse, Johnny. Mighty Park, a half brother to Might Bite. And look, it was a bit of a farce for Maiden Herd, really, half the field, but kind of having a different race completely, I suppose. But he was back from 5-2 into 8-13. There was an interesting Stewards inquiry afterwards as well into the running of another JP McManus horse, a game of 2 halves, where Danny Gilligan was asked about that horse's running, and he gave no comment, as kind of something you'd see in a true crime documentary on Netflix. Not really you'd see it in a Stewards inquiry too often. That was a bit unusual, I thought.
This was mad. Vinny put it into our little WhatsApp group, and I sent this around to a couple people. I found it quite funny because I don't, for all, JP McManus has an awful lot of horses running, but their record in maiden hurdles and beginners chases would suggest to me that I don't know if the stewards really do their job all the time, or are hard enough on horses who have inconsistencies in their form, horses running in beginners chases at 50-1 that are 145 rated hurdlers, stuff like that. So they did look into a game of 2 halves. First of all, Mighty Park was mighty impressive when you consider Might Bite is by Scorpion, how good he was. This horse could be very good. We don't really know, but I actually Danny Gilligan from Infunem, he won't use 2 words if one will do, and he's a kind of a to the point person. But I tell you what, I don't know what the repercussions are for a jockey in this, sir. I've never actually seen this before ever, but I'd much prefer a jockey say nothing than telling 5 minutes of lies. If he comes in and says no comment to make, I'm not commenting on this ride, I'd much prefer that to giving a load of waffle for 2 minutes that isn't true. So fair play, Danny.
Yeah, it was just an interesting one. That's something I'd seen before on a Stewards inquiry, to be fair. But staying on Fairyhouse for a minute, Paddy Bambino Fever, she was impressive winning her maiden hurdle there on Wednesday. Patrick kept the door open to the Supreme as well. Maybe some people were pigeonholing her as a Mayor's Novice hurdle target, but Patrick sounded keen on her Supreme target, which I'm sure was music to your ears.
Yeah, definitely. Look, I still think she's good enough to win a Supreme, to be honest. Patrick coming out with his I've kind of learned in the last few years that what Patrick says and what Willie says sometimes they don't add up, until we sit down and make the entries and put the jockeys on them, and I think then we know where they're going. But wouldn't read too much into it. Look, I thought she jumped really well. I thought she won probably a bad race and won it as she liked. But listen, she's a mare I love, and I think if she was mine, she'd be going one way, and that's Supreme. Because listen, we've a standout favourite now in Old Park Star, Henderson's horse, who was very, very good the weekend. Now you have to give him credit. He looks a beast. He looks the old Altior sort of style, big chasing type, galloping type, very straightforward horse. But look, I the Supreme is a brilliant race this year. It really is. It's bringing me back to the old Supremes, where you can ask 10 people who's going to win it or who's going to run it, and they'll get 10 different answers, which is brilliant, And just going back to, Danny Gilligan there on the Stewards report, I nearly put that down to the Stewards type now more than Danny, because if you think about it, this happens all the time, say, in racing. If you're a jockey and you feel like something has gone wrong, you can mention it to the clerk of the scales and they'll take note of it. And I always kind of did as a rider, I don't know, I was always told to do it and asked to do it, that if one made a noise or coughed or didn't feel right, just say it to the clerk of the scales. But sometimes the stipe will come in and walk around the weigh room and say, and to comment. And I'm sure Danny just said no. So if they wanted to go to him with a question, they could have went to him with a question. So I'd put that more on the Stewards, and Danny doesn't have to say anything.
No, that might make a little bit more sense, to be fair. It seemed a bit unusual if it was the other way around. But we'll move forward to Thurles yesterday. Johnny, I kind of mentioned it a small bit earlier, but free entry sponsored by the bookmakers. Big crowd there. Good to see. People were saying the biggest crowd they've seen in Thurles in quite a while. It was a good card there with two grade twos of the day as well. But look, that free entry seemed to work for them. Maybe it's something that should be happening more often.
Yeah, it's funny, all the money spent on facilities and all of that. And when you look at a place like a race course where there might only be 20 meetings in the whole year, so you're only using it a few days a year. Sometimes you do wonder, should all this money be put into facilities where there are only a few race meetings going on? And Thurles, I think Thurles was probably it definitely needs to be upgraded and all of that. But sometimes it's almost the charm of the place that it is like what it is. And I think there's a lot of goodwill towards Thurles on the back of what happened 11 months ago. I really do feel that it's the repercussions of what happened to Michael Sullivan are still being felt today. And I feel people when in relation to Thurles, it was like you really understand how much you miss something if it were to be gone. If Thurles were to go, people would miss it greatly. And the bookmakers, I know some people say that the bookmakers, Asher, sponsoring a race meeting, sure, that doesn't do any good. People aren't going to come racing anyway. I think there was goodwill towards this, and it does matter to some people. Not everyone can get complimentary tickets. It's hard on people to be paying for events. For a lot of people these days, it's cost of living and all of that. And I think they got it back in spades. It was a good card as well. There was just some good, Rise and Dust. The progression he's had under Mullins been something else. I know Jade Gouji was 1-7, but that was it was still a decent race, and she's a star mare. And for all that Willie dominated the big race, it was a brilliant race for grade 2. It was a really, really good contest. And I'm delighted that, considering where Thurles has been over the last year, that it was able to have a meeting like this. The ground's in good nick at the moment. And great to see. Looked to be a good kind of atmosphere in the place as well.
Yeah, and Barry Connell kind of in the middle of his rant about John Bon was talking about how he'd never seen as many families racing as there was in Thurles, and that free entry card definitely is a massive help for families, I suppose. Looking for something to do on a Sunday, you hear the races are free, why not go out and have a look? And sounded like there was a good reception for the winners as well, Paddy. I appreciate it. I suppose he's a bit of an old favourite there now as well, winning that Grade 2 in Thurles for the second year running, kind of a horse you can recognise as Supreme winner from years ago, but a good card overall, and I think the crowd seemed to get it behind it. And I don't know, like, we talk about maybe decline in attendances all the time, but I don't see why. Look, the bookmakers, all credit to them for sponsoring it, but I don't see why the bookmakers should have to be the ones to put up the money for this. Maybe the race courses themselves should recognise the good this can do by free entry. You'll get a lot more people in. They'll spend money in the gate, and it just creates atmosphere on course, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely delighted for Thurles. Johnny alluded to it there. There's a feel about Thurles, and it's hard to explain until you're there. And even as a rider, you just love going to Thurles because the Maloney family are one of the nicest families in the game. And I'm delighted for them because the IHRB wanted to close this track, and they were going to close it. Because Rena Maloney called their bluff. They told her, you have to put in a watering system that will bankrupt you, but you have to do it or else you're closing this down. And you have to have a walkway for horses, and you have to do this. And she called her bluff. She said, okay, well, we'll close it down. And then all of a sudden, oh, no, we could, there's a bit of uproar. And people realised Thurles, like Mouse Morris works all is Cheltenham horses in Thurles. So Edward O'Grady used to do the same, from War of Attrition to Van Elmar. The very good horses run around Thurles because unique track. But I just loved as a rider the welcome atmosphere in Thurles. It's a real Irish country folk sort of track, and the free entry, yes, definitely. I mean, what would it cost, for other tracks to open the gates? And I think it helps get never mind the younger generation and the newer generation, it helps get that older generation to actually keep going back. Because if they have to go online and buy a ticket, and people don't, that older generation might know where to get a ticket anymore. And that's all they need to just not go racing. So I'm sure if a free in, so you'd have a grandfather, you'd have a father, the kids, the mother, the granny, and they're bringing the young generation along. So the fact you don't forget about the older generation as well. But as a rider, and I'm sure as a trainer, it's the same. There's just a really good feel about Thurles, and nobody's afraid to bring good horses there because it's a real good test for Cheltenham. And yeah, when the gun is to their head and they have to do something, it's been done, and Thurles is striving for it. And fair play to the bookmakers because it was a generous donation, and I don't know, HRI should look at it and really take note.
Just on that him, the bookmakers, like it's fair to say for years it was hard for punters. Like overrounds were very high. Bookmakers, they say you never see a poor bookmaker. In fairness, the bookmakers had it good. The betting ring now is really competitive in Ireland. Like, and if you go racing, you can bet in cash. So, like, I don't have to worry about if I'm going for a mortgage now, putting, like, banks giving out about having a 20 quid bet with Paddy Power or whatever, or one of the bookies. Like, you go, it's a cash transaction, or card if you want, but it's cash transaction most of the time. The overrounds are very, very low. Like, so you're getting great value with the bookmakers. You really are. Like, and sometimes you're kind of looking at home as to the prices that are being returned or the prices that you're getting in the shops. The betting ring isn't as relevant as it was in terms of the SPs. The starting prices are now dictated off course, and sometimes this results in like odds-on favourites that should definitely not be odds-on, and you do wonder at times what's actually dictating the price that is being returned. But in the betting ring, you are still getting like loads of competition among the bookmakers. They're betting really, really tight margins, and I would laud them. I don't think they get enough credit as well for creating an atmosphere in the betting ring, and the love that they have of going every day, and they're they're generally just good people that you meet there. And I think sometimes the bookmakers, they get taken for granted a bit by the authorities in this country.
Yeah, 100%. And you actually did a really good interview with Colm White, I think it was, in Clonmel a few weeks ago. If anyone, kind of just amplifying the points you just made, really, if anyone has looked back on Twitter, it's up there. Just have a watch back, and it kind of just amplifies everything you said there. It was a great interview, actually. But lads, we'll move on. We're kind of running a little bit over time. Quick mention of the Tyestes on this Thursday. Obviously, it's a great card. Johnny, I'll ask you, did Gordon have much of a mention of anything he's going to target at Gordon on Thursday?
To be honest, Emma, I kind of had the Dublin Racing Festival cap on, but the horse that kind of intrigued me that he mentioned was Jerry Killam, because he's kind of forgotten about now in the Gold Cup division. But as of now, like, it looks like he's almost certain to run in what will be an intriguing renewal of the Galmoy, and I see he's actually available at 7-1, which is funny for horse visibility. So he was the one that I thought, like, I didn't necessarily get the impression they think that he's like where they want him to be, but basically he'd sort of said to Jack Kennedy, Gordon said to him the last day, just kind of like look after him if he starts making mistakes, and he sort of did, and he was looked after by Jack, but he could be interesting at a price. But fantastic, I love Gordon Tyesi's Day. It's the middle of the week in a place in the middle of the country, like real old school, great atmosphere there, and if anyone hasn't been, I'd thoroughly recommend it.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, interesting to hear Jerry Plum's likely to go there. I saw that entry. I was wondering, will he take it up? So yeah, that's adding to the card, definitely. But Tyesi's looks a cracker, Paddy. Look, we don't know what's running yet, but we've got Spindleberry there, top of the way. It's Crow Park. It looks like a real high-class field. We obviously had last year's Grand National winner winning this en route to Aintree. Is there anything in the Tyesi's field that caught your eye?
It's been a great race for the National, Emma, down through the years. You know, I'm thinking of number 6 Valverde winning it for Martin Brazel, and if you go through it, it's a great test. A horse actually I fancy for it is Answer to Cave, Terence O'Brien's horse that won the Tri-Town. I think this is a cracking horse. I think he's maturing really well and getting better and better, and he's a horse for a National, I think. So. And I think Yes Man is another horse I think would have a little squeak in it, but I'd be back in Answer the Cave. And just to mention Gowran as well, a bit like Thurles, you know, an absolute salt of the earth race course with tradition and value, and not bursting the doors open to try and get just young people. See the value of having that homely sort of welcome.
Yeah, they get that local crowd, and people like if anyone who kind of seems to go to that Tyesi's.
Can I just mention as well, Emma, how poor the prize money is for such a good race. Tyesi's $100,000, like the $100,000 race of a race of that spec. That should be up there just below an Irish National or something, really, because the horses that run there and horses that come through there, and for all the sponsorship value of it, it's a massive day, but that's poor money.
It is really, I suppose, like if you're trying to attract that like Grand National type of horse, but even like in the past there's been Gold Cup type, or like Jack Adam and On His Own, both ran in that on the way to being placed in Gold Cups, I'm pretty sure. So yeah, like you think, you know, if you're going to try and attract that kind of quality of a horse, it has to be better. I know it's a race steeped in tradition, which is probably why plenty of owners and trainers alike would like to target it. And look, it's not the worst prize money in the world, but if you want, I suppose, the best run there, it probably should be a little bit better, I'd say. One who I didn't mind in that, yeah, I can see the case for Answer to Cave there, in fairness, and for yeah, man, like the ground, the rain here. I'm not living too far from Gowran, and the forecast all week looks fairly bad. It's been lashing rain all day here today, so I'd imagine it's probably not fairly similar down the road. It's only about 45 minutes away, so probably wouldn't be too different, but probably something that like that kind of ground. I liked I was looking this morning, he was about 14-1, I think, when I looked earlier on, Captain Cody. He's not like massively exposed, I suppose, for a horse in a race like this. He obviously won the Scottish National last year, kind of helping Willie get that trainer's title. He ran well in the Paddy Power Chase last time, and in the Drinmore before that. But Willie's horses, like we saw, like he had a 5-timer in Fairyhouse during the week. He had ranked 3 winners in Thurles yesterday. He's starting to turn the screw on them again there now. So I'd say Captain Cody, like if you can get him at a nice each way price, could run a good race in there as well. Johnny, any horse for you to follow either going forward or looking back on last week?
Yeah, the Tyesi's is tough. I'd be hoping, because of what you mentioned, Emma, in relation to the ground, that Intense Raffles will be able to show a bit more. Like Tom Gibney's horses are running well, and he's coming down the weights a bit. Like, so he's a horse like Spindleberry might be the Willie Mullins one. She's top weight, like, so there. I think the class horse in the race should definitely be given kind of a favourable mention. But Intense Raffles, he loved that ground. He's more than enough ability if he comes back right. Horse to take out of last week, I was in Navan, so I'll go with the meeting I was at, and there are actually some like really, really thought-provoking performances. I suppose Slade Steele getting beaten again, even though I wouldn't give up on him, was definitely one of the horses to talk about. I'm going to actually give the bumper horse, the Irish Avatar, really, really strapping individual. He'd take your eye. He won by 9 lengths. Now, Jigginstown had 2 in the race. Low Kick, he was sort of on edge in the parade ring, and he might have slightly needed the run. But he still beat him 9 lengths, and definitely Liscavine, who was third. Andy Slattery was talking him up a little bit. And Irish Avatar, he just kind of went through the gears in the race, really. He's a sort of horse now I wouldn't go near the Cheltenham bumper with. I don't know, you might laugh at that, but I just look forward to the future with him. He's 5 years of age, and just look forward to him chasing. I nearly wonder should he even go hurdling with a horse like this. But the Irish Avatar, who's by Poet's Words, and Poet's Word is a sire, I suppose, who came to prominence a bit with Tom Cleary having a horse who won a bumper, oh my word, and he's now joined Tony Martin as well. I see Brian Sheeran did a story on that in TDN, so he's a good bumper horse that might have a Cheltenham squeak, oh my word. But Poet's Word, he's with Boards Mill, and he's a nice horse here in the Irish Avatar. Really would take your eye.
But as we wrap it up there, thanks for everything. Thanks everyone for tuning in. If you're going to have a bet in Gore later this week or anywhere else, make sure to gamble responsibly, and we'll see you for next week's show.